Act 1 text and the Act 1 study guide. We'll talk about it. Then we'll start on through Act 1. Try to get through scene 1 and scene 2 today, but I'm not sure. For a short day because advisory. So breakfast really kept it into it. So overall, like when we read, we won't necessarily read every single scene together as a class. So we're going to start out together just so that everybody is on the same page and understanding what's going on at the beginning. So, if you've never read a play before or seen a play before, the front page here has a breakdown of just the different characters and sort of the setting and that type of thing. So it takes place in the 14th century in Verona and Mantua, Italy. And then you have your list of characters. So you have the Capulets, the Montagues, and then sort of the other citizens that live in Verona, who are not necessarily affiliated with one family or the other. Sorry, I'm like recording so that I can post it to the virtual. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll listen to the audio of the act. I'll stop at various points and talk about what's going on. We'll talk about characters. We'll talk about figurative language, all that stuff. You have your figurative language notes from the other day. It might be helpful. And we already did the prologue translation. So I'm not going to talk too much about the prologue. They do read it, but we've basically already covered it. So that is where we'll start. So if you want to turn to the first page, is where the prologue is. Just as a reminder, it's basically a preview of what the play is going to be about, the theme. The narrator explains that this is a feud between two families, the Capulets and Montagues, and he tells us that the feud will end in tragedy. On the side of your page here, notice how there's line numbers and explanations. Those are going to be really beneficial to you throughout the play. They're going to give you more information. Sometimes it'll just be like a translation of a word. Sometimes it'll be like a paraphrase of a whole section. So if you're feeling stuck, make sure that you look there first. The other thing that I would say about reading Shakespeare is that it's not necessarily like you don't have to understand every single word, right? As long as you're understanding a general sense of what they're talking about, just like when we did that paraphrase for the prologue, it's more about like understanding the general meaning versus every single word. So don't get stuck on like, oh, I didn't understand that one word and then spend like an hour trying to figure it out. Okay.
The Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, William Shakespeare. The prologue.
Two households, both alike in dignity, In fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage. The which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend.
Okay, so that's just the prologue. So basically just one actor comes out on stage, says it, leaves, and then we begin the actual action of the scene, okay? So plays are divided into acts. The acts are then divided into scenes. The acts roughly correspond with the parts of the plot diagram. So Act 1 would be exposition, Act 2 rising action, Act 3 climax, Act 4 falling, Act 5 resolution, roughly, okay? So Act 1 is a lot of exposition. We're meeting the characters. We're sort of understanding the situation that's happening in their world, okay? Each scene takes place in one location. So you can see at the top where it says Scene 1, a public square in Verona. So everything in Scene 1 is taking place in this public square. You have to kind of think about, like, if you've ever seen a play, right? If they have to change the setting, that's the end of a scene, okay? So as this scene starts, we have two young Capulet servants, Gregory and Samson. Okay, they will be swaggering across the stage, joking and bragging. They're kind of, I don't know, they're just talking about like how manly they are and tough they are and like kind of making some dirty jokes with each other, okay? Just kind of being guys walking down the street. And then they're going to run into two servants from the rival house of Montague, which turns into an ugly street fight, okay? So I kind of like to give you just sort of like a little bit of a frame of reference so you can kind of start to figure out where things are going, okay? So Samson and Gregory are going to be your Capulets, and then Abram and Balthazar are the Montagues that come in, okay? So again, we'll listen, I'll pause it, we'll talk about what's going on, and then we'll keep going.
Act 1, Scene 1, a public square in Verona.
Gregory, on my word, will not carry coals.
No, for then we should be colliers.
I mean, and we being collar, will draw.
Aye, while you live, draw your neck out of collar.
I strike quickly, being moved.
But thou art not quickly moved to strike.
A dog of the house of Montague moves me.
To move is to stir, and to be valiant is to stand. Therefore, if thou art moved, thou runnest away.
A dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montagues.
That shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall.
'Tis true, and therefore, women being the weaker vessels are ever thrust to the wall. Therefore, push I will Montague's men from the wall, and thrust his maids to the
The
wall.
quarrel is between our masters and us, their men.
'Tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with the men, I will be cruel with the maids. I will cut off their heads.
The heads of the maids.
Aye, the heads of the maids, or their maiden heads. Take it in what sense thou wilt.
They must take it in sense that feel it.
Me they shall feel while I am able to stand. But just know, I am a pretty piece of flesh.
'Tis well thou art not fish. If thou hadst been poor John. Draw thy tool. Here comes two of the house of Montagues.
My naked weapon is out. Quarrel, I will back thee.
Okay, I'm gonna stop right there for a second. Okay, so like I said, don't necessarily have to understand everything that they're saying to understand kind of the gist of what's going on. They're just like walking down the street, like bragging about, they're so tough, right? Like, oh, if I see a Montague, I'm gonna fight him and I'm gonna push his women to the wall and like do all these things. I'll be a tyrant, right? He's just like bragging and like boasting and kind of talking himself up, right? Samson is kind of this like aggressive, I don't know, very like macho, machismo kind of guy, right? And you can already see, like in lines 3 and 4, we have a pun. So you can kind of already like get a sense of how often these are going to come in here, okay? So Samson says, I mean, and we being caller will draw. And if you look over in the footnote, it says that in caller means angry. So he's saying if we're angry, we'll draw our swords, is what he's meaning there, okay? And then Gregory says, I, while you live, draw your neck out of collar, which means a noose. Okay, so collar, they sound the same. This is a pun, okay? They're difficult to identify sometimes, so that's why I'm trying to, at least at the beginning, throw some to you. This is your copy of the text, so personally I recommend like underlining, highlighting, whatever you need to do. You can use these on quizzes and tests. So that's a pun. It's lines 3 and 4. Okay, they're basically just walking along talking about how like they won't allow anyone from the house of Montague to insult them. Okay. And then we see Abram and Balthazar are going to come in line 29. Okay, so you see in brackets there it says enter Abram and Balthazar, servants to the Montagues. So really make sure that you're paying attention to the stage direction so that you're not lost on like who is even in the scene right now, okay? So right now we've got Samson and Gregory, okay, they're in, and now Abram and Balthazar walk in, okay? And Samson's just been talking about like how tough he is and how he'll fight any Montague that he sees, okay? And now here come 2 Montagues. So Samson and Gregory are going to try to provoke Balthazar and Abram to a fight.
You put his arm and furnishes his bones, and a pretty piece of flesh.
'Tis well thou art not fish.
It's at the very top of the page.
Thou hast been poor John. Draw thy tool, here comes 2 of the house of Montagues.
My naked weapon is out. Quarrel, I will back thee.
How, turn thy back and run?
Fear me not.
No, Mary, I fear thee.
Let us take the law of our sides. Let them begin.
I will frown as I pass by. Let them take it as they list.
Nay, as they dare. I will bite my thumb at them, which is disgrace to them if they bear it.
Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
I do bite my thumb, sir.
Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
Is the law of our side if I say A? No. No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir.
Do you quarrel, sir?
Quarrel, sir? No, sir.
But if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you.
No better?
Well, sir.
Say better, here comes one of my master's kinsmen.
Yes, better, sir.
You lie.
Draw if you be men. Gregory, remember thy squashing blow.
Okay. So for all of Samson's like boasting, he still realizes that if they start the fight, they're going to be the ones who get in trouble, right? So in line 34, he says, let us take the law of our sides, let them begin. So he's going to try to like provoke them to start a fight, right? He doesn't want to just go up and like pull out his sword and like start fighting them. He's going to try to provoke Balthazar and Abram to do something. Poor Abram doesn't want to stay up. Okay, so what does Samson do to them? He bites his thumb at them. He says, I will bite my thumb at them, which is a disgrace to them. So what does it mean to bite your thumb at someone? That's your first question. Is it a gesture of friendship and insult or a way of hitting on someone? It's an insult, right? So yeah, it would be like the equivalent of like flipping someone off today, right? So like, it's just like a rude gesture, okay? And then we get this kind of humorous scene here where Abram's like, do you bite your thumb at us? And Samson is being like very sarcastic here, like saying that he's not trying to start a fight when he clearly is, right? He's like, I do bite my thumb. Abram says, do you bite your thumb at us? Samson says, no, I don't bite my thumb at you. I'm just biting my thumb, right? So it's like being like, oh, I'm not flipping you off. I'm just standing here with my middle finger up in your direction, but it's not at you. Yeah, so, and yeah, you hear them like repeating this sir, like being very formal, but like aggressive. Yeah, like sir. So provoking them. So Samson then in line 47 says, I serve as good a man as you. So now they're talking about who their like masters are, right? So the Lord Capulet and Lord Montague. What's that? Yeah, yes. So he said, Samson says, I serve as good a man as you. Abram says, no better, right? They're equals. And then Gregory says, hey, say we serve someone better, like say Capulet's better, because here comes one of my master's kinsmen. So then Samson says, yes, better, sir. So now he's saying, actually, my master is better than your master. So now these guys feel like their house has been disrespected. And so that's now when they're going to draw their swords and start fighting. Okay, so you have to think about like, this is the 1500s, right? There's a lot of like, I don't know, pride and honor, right? And who your house is. So he's going to defend it. Okay, so they're going to start fighting. We're going to meet two characters here in the next little short bit that are very important to the play. Pay close attention to the first things that they say, which are going to tell us a lot about their character overall. Okay, Benvolio and Tybalt. So we're at the bottom of page 1040.
Heart, fool, stop your sword, you know not what you do.
What? Art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death.
I do but keep the peace, put up my sword, or manage it to part these men with me.
What? Drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee. Have at thee, coward.
Okay, so let's talk about these two guys. Benvolio is Romeo's cousin. Okay, so he's a Montague. I think that's one of your questions. Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. He's a Capulet. Okay. So Benvolio's first line is, part fools, put up your swords, you know not what you do. What kind of person could we assume that Benvolio is going to be based on that? Peaceful, definitely. Right? He's always just trying to like keep everybody chill, okay? Tybalt, on the other hand, comes in. He sees that Benvolio has his sword out because Benvolio is trying to stop them from fighting, right? So he's like taking out his sword to be like, stop, like trying to get them to chill. Tybalt then says, what, art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death. So Tybalt is assuming that Benvolio is part of the fight, okay? And then the next thing that Tybalt says is, what, drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee. So what kind of person does Tybalt seem to be? Violent, definitely. Any other words that we could use to describe him? Hot-headed for sure, okay? So like very short temper. He is like always looking for a fight, okay? And this is going to be true of him throughout the entire play. He's always just like ready to go, okay? Doesn't want to listen to logic, right? Benvolio tries to explain, like, I'm trying to get them to stop fighting. And Tybalt's like, whatever, let's go, okay? All right. So now this is going to turn into like a total brawl. If you've ever seen like a baseball game where two people start fighting and then the whole benches and like everyone from the bullpen starts running in and it's just like this crazy mess, that's what this is like. Capulets start running in, Montagues start running in, all these people start coming in, okay?
Clubs, bills, and partisans, strike, beat them down. Down on the populace. Down on the populace.
Please give me my long sword. Oh! A crutch. Why can't you for a sword.
My sword, I say, old Montague, is come and furnishes his blade in spite of me.
Stop killing Capulet. Hold me not, let me go.
Thou shalt not stir 1 foot to see the foe.
Rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this labor-stained steel. Will they not hear? What? Ho! You men! You beasts! That quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture, from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet, and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans, in hands as old, cankered with peace to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me, and Montague, come you this afternoon, to know our farther pleasure in this case, to old Freetown, our common judgment place. Once more, on pain of death, all men depart.
Okay, so everyone is hopping in on this fight. Lord Capulet's ready, right? He says, get me my long sword, and his wife is like, you need a crutch more than you need a sword, right? She's like, you should have a cane, not a sword. You're old. Stop. You're not fighting. And Lady Montague says the same thing to Lord Montague, right? She says, you shall not stir 1 foot to seek a foe. So both of the ladies of the house are like, you let the young people fight. You guys are old. Stop, okay? And then we see the prince come in. So Prince Aeschylus, he's the Prince of Verona. So although these are like noble, wealthy families, he still is like the ruler of the city and can make the rules, okay? And he asks them, he says, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground in line 80. That's personification, right? We're giving the weapons an emotion, okay? And he tells us, how many times have these guys had these brawls in the street? 3 times, right? 3 civil brawls bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet, and Montague. So he's basically saying you're not fighting over anything. It's like someone said something to someone else, and then you're having this huge brawl disrupting my whole city, right? You need to stop, okay? So he gives them an ultimatum. What does he tell them? Yeah, if ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. So he's saying if you guys fight again in the streets, whoever's doing it is gonna be put to death, basically, right? You get sentenced to death. The prince is over it. They are disturbing his peaceful little town, okay? So that's question 3 on your study guide. They have fought 3 times, and the next person to fight is going to be put to death, okay? That will become very important. We call that foreshadowing, okay? So make sure you keep that in your mind. All right, so everybody's gonna leave the scene except for Benvolio and Lord and Lady Montague. Remember that Benvolio is Lord Montague's nephew. He's Romeo's cousin, okay? And they're going to be talking about Romeo and what's been going on with Romeo lately. It's super sad.
Who set this ancient quarrel in approach? Speak, nephew, were you by when it began?
Here were the servants of your adversary and yours, close fighting ere I did approach. I drew to part them. In the instant came the fiery Tybalt with his sword prepared, which as he breathed defiance to my ears, he swung about his head and cut the winds, who, having hurt withal, kissed him in scorn. While we were interchanging thrusts and blows, came more and fought on part and part, till the prince came, who parted either part.
But where is Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am he was not at this fray.
Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drave me to walk abroad, where, underneath the grove of sycamore that westward rooteth from the city's side, so early walking did I see your son. Towards him I made, but he was ware of me, and stole into the covert of the wood. I, measuring his affections by my own, which then most sought where most might not be found, being one too many by my weary self, pursued my humor, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned who gladly fled from me.
Many a morning hath he there been seen with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs. But all so soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed. Away from light steals home my heavy son, and private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Black and portentous must this humor be, unless good counsel may the cause remove.
Okay, so let's stop there. Okay, so the first little part that Benvolio speaks, he's basically just going over what happened with the fight, right? He's like, I tried to stop it. Here comes fiery Tybalt, right? And he won't hear anything, right? He wants to fight. So then Lady Montague asks, where's Romeo, right? He wasn't here at this fight. Where is he? And Benvolio explains that he saw Romeo earlier that day. Okay, so line 111, he says, Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drave me to walk abroad. So he's saying that an hour before sunrise, right? So it's very early in the morning. He's got something on his mind. He goes walking and he sees Romeo also out walking early in the morning. Okay, line 116. So early walking did I see your son. Towards him I made, but he was ware of me, and stole into the covert of the wood. So Benvolio walks towards Romeo, and what happens? Runs off. Okay. So Benvolio says, I measuring his affections by my own, which then most sought where most might not be found. Being one too many by my weary self, pursued my humor, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned who gladly fled from me. So why doesn't he go after Romeo? I gladly shunned who gladly fled from me. Why is Benvolio out there in the first place? Why is Benvolio out walking? Yeah, he's got something on his mind, right? He says, a troubled mind drave me to walk abroad. So he's already got stuff on his mind, and he's like, okay, there's Romeo, but he clearly doesn't want to talk to me, and I've got stuff on my mind anyway, so whatever, right? He's going to let him go. Montague then tells us that this is how Romeo's been acting for a while, right? Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs, okay? So he's saying, yeah, he's been doing this a lot, going out before sunrise, walking around, sighing and crying, okay? But also soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed, away from light steals home my heavy son, and private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out. So as soon as the sun rises, what does Romeo go do? Hides out in his room, okay? Sounds like me. Locked in his room being moody, okay? We've got some a literary device here at the bottom of this page where it says, but also as soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed. What type of literary device is that? Yeah, Dane? Not a metaphor. An illusion, good. Okay, so Aurora is the Roman goddess of the dawn. Okay, so he's saying the sun is pulling back the curtains from Aurora's bed, right? So it's like the dawn is coming, okay? And you can see how on the bottom of the page it says 129, Aurora, the goddess of the dawn, okay? So it will give you hints about those allusions in your footnotes. Make sure you're using them. Okay. So we're going to try to figure out why Romeo has been so moody lately, why he's just hiding in his dark room. We're at the top of page 1043.
My noble uncle, do you know of it?
I neither know it nor can learn of it,
Have you importuned him by any means?
both by myself and many other friends. But he, his own affections counselor is to himself. I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding and discovery, as is the bud bit of an envious worm, ere he can spread his sweet leaves to the air, or dedicate his beauty to the sun. Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, we would as willingly give cure as know.
See where he comes. So please you step aside, I'll note his grievance, or be much denied.
I would thou wert so happy by thy stay to hear true shrift. Come, madam, let's away.
Okay, so does Lord Montague know why Romeo is upset? No, right? He says, I don't know, and I can't learn of him. What's wrong with him? Okay. And so then Benvolio sees Romeo walking in and says, I'll try to figure it out. You guys leave. I'll try to talk to him and see what's going on. Okay. Again, keep in mind when we meet major characters, the first couple of lines that they have tell us a lot about their character. So think about what type of person Romeo seems to be based on his first few lines of dialogue here.
Good morrow, cousin,
Is the day so young?
but new struck 9.
Ay me, sad hours seem long. Was that my father that went hence so fast?
It was. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours?
Not having that which having makes them short.
In love,
Out,
of love.
out of her favor where I am in love.
Alas, that love so gentle in his view should be so tyrannous and rough in proof.
Okay, so we're gonna stop there. All right, so Benvolio says, good morning, cousin. And Romeo says, is the day so young? Like, oh my gosh, it's still morning. Benvolio says, but new struck 9. And Romeo says, ay me, sad hours seem long. What type of person does Romeo seem to be based on these couple of lines?
Depressed. Yes.
Yes. It's very sad and depressed. What else? Yes, definitely wallowing in self-pity. Okay, he is super emotional, right? And you might even maybe call him a little bit dramatic, okay? Because like, man, your cousin just said good morning to you and you have to respond with like, is it still morning, right? Like he reminds you of like Eeyore, right? In like the Winnie the Pooh movies, like where he's like always just like, oh, so sad. Okay. So Romeo is going to be very emotional and very dramatic the entire play, okay? So just keep that in mind about him. And he, what's he upset about? He's in love, right? She does not love him back, right? Benvolio says in love, Romeo says out. Benvolio says of love, and Romeo says out of her favor where I am in love. He loves someone who doesn't love him back. But we have to kind of talk about like what love was like back then. Because it's not like today where like you go to school with someone or you meet them at a party or whatever. Like back then, you didn't date, right? If you saw someone, like the man would be the only one that like would be pursuing anything. Women were not like allowed to do that really. So Romeo or whoever, if he sees someone and wants to like pursue them, I mean, he can write her letters. He could like send her gifts. He could go to her father and offer to marry her. That's basically it. Okay, like there's no going on dates. There's no like getting to know each other like that. It's like
Either you're together or not.
yeah, like you either like get married or you don't, right? And women had very little say in it. okay, as far as like who they would marry, right? Their fathers, like wealthy families. I mean, basically girls like didn't work outside of the home at this time. So if you had an adult daughter, you as her father, she is just like taking your money, right? Because she's like eating your food. You need to give her clothes. You need to take care of her. That's extra strain on your finances. So you want to get her married off so that then her husband has to do that, right? So there's not a lot of like romantic love that happens at this time traditionally, okay? That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Obviously, things are going to happen later in this play, but just, yeah, it's just not like it is now or even in the past 100 years or whatever, okay? It's a long time ago and things were very different then. So what I'm trying to say is it's not like he's spent a lot of time with this person that he thinks that he's in love with. All right, so we're going to continue on. We're at the very bottom of page 1043.
Know the cause, and I don't know it, nor can learn it. Have you been
Oh,
questioning
no.
these, both by myself and many other friends, his beauty to the sun? Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, was ours,
Not having that which having
Here we
makes them short.
In love,
Out.
of love.
Out of her favor where I am in love.
Alas, that love so gentle in his view should be so tyrannous and rough in proof.
Alas, that love, whose view is muffled still, should without eyes see pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? Oh, me, what fray was here? Yet tell me not, for I have heard it all. There's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, oh brawling love, oh loving hate, oh anything of nothing first create, oh heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep that is not what it is. This love feel I that feel no love in this. Dost thou not laugh?
No, cause I'd rather weep
Good heart, at what?
at thy good heart's oppression.
Why such is love's transgression? Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate, to have it pressed with more of thine. This love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own. Love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs, being purged to fire sparkling in lover's eyes, being vexed to see nourished with lover's tears. What is it else? Of madness most good Markman.
Oh,
She's fair, I love.
All right, fair mark, fair.
Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate, to have it pressed with more of thine.
sensitive.
This love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own. Love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs, being purged to fire sparkling in lover's eyes, being vexed to see nourished with lover's tears. What is it else? Of madness most discreet, a choking gall and preserving sweet. Farewell, my love.
Soft.
Okay, sorry about that. So Romeo and Benvolio walk, they see the scene of this brawl, and Romeo at the top of this page is upset and confused. He says, brawling love, oh loving hate, oh heavy lightness, serious vanity. These are all examples of what? Yes. Oxymorons, excellent. They are opposites, right? Contradictory phrases, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health. These are all oxymorons. Basically everything that he says from line 169 to line 173. Yes, he does. Okay. Then we've got Romeo talking about love here. Hi. In line 183. Love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs. What kind of figurative language is that? Love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs. Metaphor. Love is a smoke. Okay. That is line 183. And then in line 186, he says, what is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, and a preserving sweet. Those are also metaphors because he's still talking about what love is, right? Even though he's not saying love is this again. Okay, thank you. That is still a metaphor. If you want to get breakfast, go ahead and go down. We'll pause for a second.
What he says, what happened here, and then he's like, no, don't tell me, I already know.
Cause
But why ask?
cause of this right here.
Yeah.
It's real dramatic, yes.
Do we have to give the scripts back?
Nope, they're yours.
Oh, cause like mine had writing on it.
Oh
so
no,
I'm
I'm
like-
sorry.
I'm like, wait, do we have to? give
No,
this back?
I used to just do a class copy, but you know, with Corona, I was like, I'll just print one for everybody. So I'm sorry. I can give you a different one if that one bothers you. Okay.
Like, overly dramatic friend.
He's kind of the worst. A little bit of the worst, yeah. I'll be honest that I haven't seen Romeo and Juliet, so I'm not sure, but
How have you not seen it? I've seen all of them.
because I'm very old.
Yeah, all of them.
I've seen what's the Sherlock Gnomes
Sherlock
one? I've
Gnomes.
seen part of that one with my kids.
Honestly, that was one of the best Sherlock movies. No, it was not at all. Yeah. Well, I have a younger sister, so I haven't watched all of the Disney movies and animated movies like her. I don't know how many times I had to watch Frozen. I know that those songs almost by heart, and that was like 4 years ago. Yeah. So baby, all this you can see some
Miss
things on
Burke.
right?
Yes.
It's number 4, Dreaming of Julia. Or Locked in the Dream.
Lost in his dream. Yep. Because the person he's in love with is not Juliet right now.
It's literally like hate and create, and then it's like rest and press, and then it's like shown and own. Sighs and eyes, tears, that is it's great. How do you not see any of that? You're literally writing a story that is based around rhyme. Why are you like this? These are equal. Oh, no, we went on 2 separate ones. Because I'm
But then you can't think of it ruin your beauty.
It'll be unbeautiful.
Yes. You can't be unbeautiful and die. Gosh.
I can't drown myself either. My hair would get wet. I just had it done.
Yeah, so why you gotta be unsensitive and say you're gonna kill yourself, but you can't.
I don't know, man.
If you read like a William Shakespeare bridge.
Yeah, I was so bad. I just read it because
That's gonna be our last one.
And it was right after the tryouts too, like she was just getting ready, so I don't even know if I would have gotten a part.
Yeah, I could have been the cook.
Oh my gosh, I literally loved that scene, but it was
My
like,
favorite scene, because it's like.
I know, like, COVID happened, like-
day. I literally had a hand cut off and my daughter,
had her
nothing
tongue
happened.
chopped
Her
off
both
and
her
her
hands were
liver,
cut off
yeah.
and her tongue was cut out. But you know what makes it better?
We're gonna cook the
I'm gonna cook
rapist.
them up and frozen, but like.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, it's like.
in my acting class,
Hilarious.
Like they do, the first one they do is Romeo and Juliet, and then they just, it's fun. So they use some of the lines, but I'm over here like, you know what? I remember this line from that part.
in my acting class, we were like 2 days ahead of the other acting class. So, we watched the movie of these 3 men just doing that play,
Yeah.
and I laughed so hard.
Yeah, I have it saved on my computer, so I just read it randomly. I'm like, you know what? Lord, read a script instead of a book. I'm reading a full-on script. There's so much audience interaction in that play. I love it.
I recommend it for you.
Tell me.
No. I
Let's
tell you,
go
I
back.
have that before I tell you what it is.
See,
that's the point.
Why can't you just tell me?
Because it's not funny if I just tell you.
Okay. Tell me, Mom. Why do you like this?
Did you guys know that this teacher keeps a boa constrictor in his classroom?
That seems safe.
Wait, what?
That's
He brought it
You know
outside
what?
when my class was outside. I
Now
was like,
that's
oh
a
my
good
gosh,
story.
you have a boa
Did you just
constrictor? He
give
was like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love snakes.
Did you just make really the entire Viva?
Oh.
I remember my first year of speech and debate, I did a parody of Shrek. Shrek was
I remember that.
Shrek was gay when I was Shrek.
I remember that. That was funny.
It was.
Get out of my school.
I was also Lord Farquaad. I was the mirror, so I got to do the whole game show host thing. I was like, do you choose Princess 1, 2, or 3?
I love the dude in the. I love the dude in the movie. He's like, number 3, my lord, number 3.
What is the vertical on?
Yeah.
Why not the big? Why don't want to think?
Oh, it was so good. You know,
He does it for us.
we didn't get anything, but it was still good. That's normally my life. Parody of Shrek that we were.
Oh, yeah.
I was with the last, and we did this,
Yeah.
we did this
And then he
thing
said.
where
secretly a
these
dinosaur
2 guys
as they
were like
usually
talking
are.
about these, like this horrible date they had, and then they end up like being in love with each other. It was weird.
We were gonna do this really sad one about fireworks. Like in the end of it, there's like a mother and a daughter talking. The mother was in a nursing home and they went to go see fireworks. And the mother just dies on the beach. I'm like, should totally do this. But then Miss Overstreet's like, no. And I'm like, but why? She's like, because. I'm like, fine. You know the poetry explaining my depression to my mother a lot. And I did that one. Oh yeah, that was an intense one. That was an intense one. Yeah. That's all we call it. Yeah. I can't even get into it, but I keep just saying it, yeah, you know.
Yeah, you know.
It's so intense.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know she was doing this. I'm like, I'm the last person to go, but then I was supposed to be the last person to go. But then everyone else who had just went for their thing locked in. And I'm like, oh, God.
Here's going on.
God.
Like, what? I don't know who did this, but someone stabbed me strong.
That's really smart, because I always spill those when I try to open the lid, you know?
We like had to do a book report, and we had to like dress up as the character. I dyed my hair for that project. It was horrible, but I dyed my hair for that project.
You went to Gladys, right, Levi? Remember the Wax Museum?
We're gonna get started again in just a couple minutes.
Like I dyed my hair orange for that project.
I intentionally was something where I would sit down.
I don't remember what I did.
I think I did a basic.
I dyed my hair orange for that.
I did basic hair and then I also did. I know, I remember I was there. that Jesse gave.
I remember Jesse.
Because I sat right across from him, and he would, every time he said, and I got shot in the back. I don't
really remember what I did, but I do remember him doing Jesse Gibbs. For some reason, I want to say the only thing I remember from the whole thing.
And then George Washington Carter. I don't even do it.
I don't even remember who it was. No, parody. The lady that went. What? He's like, I totally regret not doing that. I probably would have actually remembered who I was if I did that person. But I don't.
I was just a baseball player, and I always swing at the end. And I know with my dad, I actually can't remember that. I was like, that's before my dad was like,
I was so embarrassed because of me. I remember my
All right, everybody, we're gonna get started again. If you're still finishing eating, that's fine. Just kind of follow along as you finish up. I just want us to at least get through scene 1. Okay, so we are on line 188 where Benvolio is speaking. And so Romeo has been kind of talking about love and, you know, how bummed out he is and everything. Benvolio is going to try to find out who it is that Romeo is in love with. It's not Juliet, just as a spoiler.
I will go alone, and if you leave me so, you do me wrong.
I lost myself. I am not here. This is not Romeo. He's some other where.
Tell me in sadness, who is that you love?
What? Shall I groan and tell thee?
Groan, I know, but sadly, tell me who.
Bid a sick man in sadness make his will. Ah, word ill urged to one that is so ill. In sadness, cousin, I do love a woman.
I aim so near when I supposed you love.
A right good markman, and she's fair I love.
All right, fair mark, fair cause is soonest hit.
Well, in that hit you miss. She'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity well armed, from love's weak childish foe she lives unharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to saints seducing gold. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor that when she dies, with beauty dies her soul.
Then she hath sworn that she will still live chaste.
She hath, and in that sparing makes huge waste. For beauty, starved with her severity, cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now.
Okay, so going back to this idea of Romeo being like, oh, that was so dramatic. Right, Benvolio's like, who is it that you love? And like, Romeo's like, I'll tell you, I love a woman. And like, Benvolio's like, okay, and right, like, so he's really dragging it out here. Okay. Yeah, okay, so really just dragging it out. At the bottom of page 1044, Romeo says, she'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity while armed. From love's weak childish foe, she lives unharmed. What kind of figurative language or literary device do we have here? Another illusion, 2 more illusions actually. She'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. Right, so Cupid, same Cupid that, you know, you see on Valentine's Day, right, shooting people with his arrows. And then she hath Dian's wit. So Diana is the goddess of chastity. Okay, so like purity and innocence, right? So by saying that she hath Dian's wit, he's saying that she's like Diana. Okay, so she is pure. At the top of page 1046, we see some of the things that Romeo has been doing to try to win her over, right? She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to saint seducing gold. So he's basically saying she's not responding to me declaring my love for her, and she's not responding to me looking at her lovingly, and she's not impressed. and she's not impressed that I'm rich, right? He's very upset. Again, it's not like he's like known this person, right? Like probably ever even spoken to her. He's probably like sent her letters and stuff, but like, is it really love? I don't know. You guys can decide. So adding to this is the fact that the reason that she doesn't want to be with him is what? Benvolio in line 210 says, then she hath sworn that she will live chaste. And Romeo says, she hath, and in that sparing makes huge waste. For beauty starved with her severity cuts beauty off from all posterity. So the woman that he's in love with, or the girl that he's in love with, has sworn that she will live chaste. What we can infer from that is that she has committed to becoming a nun, okay? So nuns take a vow of chastity. They never take a husband. They never have children, okay? They are like married to God, essentially, okay? So it's really not even that this girl doesn't like Romeo. It's that she's never going to get married anyway, right? Again, going to this idea of him being very over-emotional, okay? And like we have a hyperbole in line 216, she hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now. Like he's like, she's never gonna love anyone, and so I might as well be dead, right? Very dramatic. Number 6 is why does she not like Romeo? So you could put that she has sworn to be chaste, or that she is going to become a nun, or whatever you would like to put there. Okay, then the rest of the scene, Benvolio is going to give Romeo some advice.
Be ruled by me, forget to think of her.
Oh, teach me how I should forget to think.
By giving liberty unto thine eyes, examine other beauties.
'Tis the way to call hers exquisite and question more. These happy masks that kiss fair ladies' brows, being black puts us in mind they hide the fair. He that is struck and blind cannot forget the precious treasure of his eyesight lost. Show me a mistress that is passing fair. What doth her beauty serve but as a note, for I may read who hath that passing fair? Farewell. Thou canst not teach me to forget.
I'll pay that doctrine, or else die in debt.
Okay, so what's Benvolio's advice to Romeo?
Look for other women.
Move on and look for other women, right? Examine other beauties. His point is basically, this girl's not the only girl in Verona, right? Find someone else. It's not a big deal. Just move on. Romeo, of course, does not agree, okay? Basically is saying that, you know, if you show me a beautiful woman, it's only going to remind me of how beautiful the woman that I love is. Okay, and really keep this in mind when we get to the end of this act, because things change. Okay. All right, so then the last thing on your study guide is to write a summary of the scene. And it's really just a couple of sentences to just kind of remind yourself, right, of what happens in what scene. This is particularly helpful when we get to like quizzes and tests, when you're like, okay, I know it was around this part, but so that you're not like flipping through every single page of the play. So if we were going to write a summary of the most important things that happened in this scene, what would be the first thing that we would write? There's the fight, right? So the Capulets and the Montagues have a huge fight, however you want to phrase that. And then what's the next important thing that happens? Marcella? Good, it's very important, good. So Prince Aeschylus issues an ultimatum, right? He says the next person to fight is gonna pay the penalty with his life, right? Will be put to death. And then what would you say is the last important thing from this scene?
Love.
Yeah, Romeo's lovesick. Romeo's heartbroken over someone who doesn't love him back, however you want to phrase it. Okay. Yes, there are other things that happen in this scene that are important, but those are really the like 3 top things to remember when you're looking back on a scene. Okay. Romeo is sad could just be like the summary of the whole play.
Like, literally is sad.
Yeah.
And then like,
And death.
he is literally the lover.
He's happy for like a
You can
couple
summarize
seconds.
the entire play in one sentence. Romeo dies because he's depressed.
Like, he's sad.
Really, Romeo just dies because he's the worst.
Oh,
It's not
he's
because
sad.
he's depressed. It's because he makes the worst decisions possible.
He does. He does though. He does.
Okay. Okay, let's start scene 2 because we have like 10 minutes. So I want to at least get scene 2 started. So scene 2 takes place on a street near the Capulet house. The scene opens with Count Paris. So Paris is not associated with either of the houses. He is a young nobleman, and he's talking to Capulet about wanting to marry Juliet.
Scene 2. A street near the Capulet house.
But Montague is bound as well as I in penalty alike, and 'tis not hard, I think, for men so old as we to keep the peace.
An honorable reckoning are you both, and pity that you lived at odds so long. But now, my lord, what say you to my suit?
But say more what I have said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her right to be a bride.
Younger than she, our happy mother's man.
And too soon marred are those so early made. The earth hath swallowed all my hopes but she. She is the hopeful lady of my earth. But woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but part. And she agree within her scope of choice lies my consent in fair according voice.
Okay. So Paris wants to do what?
Marry Juliet.
Wants to marry Juliet. Okay, that's number 1. That's the suit that he's bringing to Capulet.
How old is Paris?
Well, it's not clear how old Paris is, but probably in his 20s, maybe in his 30s. It's hard to say. So let's talk about the time period, okay? It's the 1500s, so honestly, there were no laws about like how old you had to be to get married. Basically, girls, once they were able to bear children, would be able to be married, because that was sort of what their purpose was seen as, was to bear children for their husband. So especially noble women would be married off at very young ages to men that were often quite older than them. Seems super gross now. It was gross back then too, but it was what people did back then, okay?
So early.
Yeah, well, and also keep in mind, like, your lifespan was a lot shorter at that time, right? We didn't have advances in medicine like we have now. Women particularly were at risk for dying young because of the frequency of dying during childbirth, right? Because they didn't have the medical technologies that we have now. So women would die in childbirth rather frequently. So yeah, they would marry young. It's kind of yucky, but it is a different time period, right? So yeah, Capulet says, my child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride. So how old is Juliet? 13. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. So Juliet's 13. Okay. And what are her father's thoughts about her allowing her to marry? She's too young, right? He's saying you need to wait a couple of years. Paris says younger than she are happy mothers made. So again, going back to the time period, he's saying like, yeah, girls younger than her are someone's mother. Crazy to think about now. Capulet points out, too soon marred are those so early made. Okay, so he's like saying like that's not always the best for them. He says, the earth hath swallowed all my hopes, but she is the hopeful lady of my earth. So he's saying that all of his other children have died. Okay, so along with women frequently dying in childbirth, children often did not survive past their first birthday, second birthday, right? Because there just wasn't modern medicine. So it's like you got an ear infection or something and it got worse and then you died. Like things just happened, okay? This is unusual for this time period. Capulet says, woo her gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but a part. This is very unusual for this time period for Lord Capulet to be saying, I want her to have a say. Like, I want her, like, you need to woo her. You need to pursue her. Like, my consent is just a part of this. Like, I want her to have a say as well. Very unusual for this time period. Okay, typically a father would be like, okay, let's, you know, it was much more of like a business transaction than like a love connection, okay? But because Juliet is his only surviving child, he has this like soft spot in his heart for her, okay? Okay. All right, let's actually stop there just because I want to give us some time. So that was 1 and 2 on your study guide for scene 2. You should have answered.